Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited because I have John Wrot on the line. Say hello, John.
Hi, everybody.
And John is founder, owner of Gatekeeper Games. You might know their games, Adapt, or The Knight's Armory, but also has the... What? Knight's Armor.
King's Armory.
King's Armory. It's okay. But actually, also maker of Havesy Dice. So what's super cool is, I mean, we have a number of publishers who are doing board games, but I haven't talked to anyone who's doing dice. And in particular, like, when I think of people who are still sort of dice makers, manufacturers, I think of Chessex and sort of the old guard, older companies that have been doing it for a long time. And I'm super curious to how it's been for you sort of breaking into that space and what that's been like, as well as, you know, Essen and all these other things. So, but to kick off, can you talk a little bit about how you got into games and dice? Like, what you know, what's your origin story? How did you jump in?
Sure. My origin story as a geeker is my older brother was like a super geeker, and he used to play D&D a lot. And he tried to get me to play, and I was like, "Get away from me with your stupid game and your costumes in the basement. I don't even want to know what you guys are doing." And then, sure enough, eventually he talked me into it. I was like, "Fine, I'll play your stupid game," and fell in love. So, isn't that the way it usually works, right?
They're fun.
So,
game, man.
Yeah, it really, really is. And to this day, I am still an RPGer at heart. I love board games, but the RPG is really where my heart is. It's constant creativity, unbounded. So I really enjoy it. So therein you can kind of see how the dice thing happened. But so that's my origin story. That's the short version.
And then so you do the... Now I'm backwards. The Knight's Armory. Or the King's. The Knights.
The King's.
God.
Yeah. The King owns the armory, and the Knight wears the armor.
Right. So it's the King's Armory that the Knight uses. So the Knight's in the King's Armory. All right. So so you decide to make a game, The King's Armory. Now, I haven't played The King's Armory, but you did that via Kickstarter, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was our first project.
And did it have dice in it? No.
It did.
That you made? Or were they Havesy dice, or are they just dice?
Well, therein lies the story of Havesy's dice.
There you go. Get to it.
All right. So during the King's Armory campaign, we actually, I promised my backers that I think it was a $92,000 or $95,000 stretch goal, which is pretty huge for a first campaign, especially like 3 or 4 years ago now.
That's a monster, man.
Yeah. Two-tone dice, because the game is based on, the combat system is based on a D20 mechanism. So if you played a role-playing game, you get it. Roll d20, add your hit roll bonus. If it's equal to or better than their dodge, you hit, deal damage, blah, blah, blah. So I promised them two-tone dice as like our meta stretch goal. There's 7 heroes in the game, and each one would have its own color. And I expected to be able to source them from, as you say, the old guard. And I called all of the companies that exist, and for whatever reason, they all told me no, or ignored me, or walked away. And I was like, following up with him, I was like, no, really, like, this isn't like a cool idea some guy has from a Kickstarter that doesn't exist yet. Like, look, here's the $95,000. Give me dice. And they all told me no.
Now, had you? So, I mean, I'm not a dice aficionado, but like, had you ever seen two-tone dice before, or were you asking for something that no one had ever done?
Oh, no, two-tone dice are very standard, very common.
Okay, so they had them, they were just like, sorry, they're ours.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So one told us no, he just wasn't willing to sell them to us. And I was like, I can't wrap my mind around this.
You mean sell them to you at a good price? Or, I mean, he must be willing to...
No, he wouldn't do it. I guess my guess is, now that I know the dice industry better, I can better understand it, because I only needed D20s, and if we're producing full RPG sets, and somebody comes up and says, I want to buy 3,000 D20s, then I go, well, that's 3,000 broken sets.
Right.
You know, so that's probably why they said it, but, and then across 7 colors. So, I mean, I kind of understand that one. I can sympathize a little bit better. The other ones I just don't understand. So
you're like, this is impossible. I have this backer commitment. I got to get this done.
Exactly. Yep. And I went back to my manufacturer, who had quoted me two-tone dice on my quote, we had 13 reiterations of said quote. And we ran a campaign that was successful on it with 970 backers. So I'm like, if I do the math on this, that's like 13,000 promises you made with 13 quotes times 1,000 backers. That's like roughly like 13,000 promises that you made saying that you could do it. So you and I don't know why I'm the one looking for the two-tone dice. You and I, we need to make it work.
Okay.
And we did. So the standard in the industry for two-tone dice are two-tone swirl. So you have like red and green or whatever, and then you put the red in the mold, and then you shoot the green into the mold, and it goes like, and you end up with this like swirly twisty, and they're really pretty. There's not very much wrong with them. But I said we need to do something different. Like I don't want to. And Chessex sells those, and they're beautiful, and I grew up on them. It's what I role played for years, getting into the industry. Which is why I tried to buy them, and on the list of companies that said no for their own reasons. And I was like, well, I don't want to just do that. Like, one of the hallmarks of the board game industry and the Kickstarter industry within the board game industry is like, you don't steal somebody else's stuff. Like, you just don't do it. Like, you could, but you don't.
Sure.
So I was like, we need to do something new. We need to do two-tone dice that nobody's ever done before. And if we're going to do it, then I want to do it better. So let's find something new and do it better. And thus, Havesies dice were invented. Here's one here. You can see why we call them Havesies dice.
So, what's the are you able to describe the technique like you described the other technique, or is that like you don't describe
Sure. No. So basically what we do is we pour the first half into the mold. We use a heavier, denser resin. All right. And then we pour the first half in. I know. Science. So we pour the first half into the mold, and then instead of shooting the other one in quickly so that they swirl, we let it cool. Now, the reason why nobody's ever done this before is because it's hard. Because I have to make sure that it cools enough that they won't mix. Because as soon as they mix, I have two-tone swirl dice. But I can't let them cool too much, or they don't actually form, and they're liable to snap in half. So finding that like perfect timing in the design where it actually works out. Yeah, and then the other cool thing is that process, accidentally, I'd like to claim that I planned it, but I didn't. That process helps us to control density better, because while the first half is cooling, if any air bubbles rise to the top, we can kill the air bubbles inside the die before putting the second half on. So no air bubbles get like sucked in and stuck in the swirl. We can actually like bloop, bloop, and kill them before the second half goes on. And then obviously the mold's going to kill any on the top. You never have an air bubble on the outside. So we ended up with something new. We used the heavier, denser resin, and then with the design ended up with this like bonus. So they're like denser twice.
Cool.
So they're technically speaking a heavier, denser, better balanced die. And it was with that that we were able to break into the industry, because it wasn't just the same mold. It was. All right.
So let's go over there now. So
sure.
So this successful Kickstarter campaign puts you on this hunt to make the perfect die. You make the perfect die. You find out the perfect die has some bonus rolls on top of it, and then how did you go about saying, okay, well, now, you know what, maybe I just want to sell dice? Like, how did that happen?
Great question. So we only needed D20s, and the factory supplied us a full set. So this is one of the original ones that we wanted, our company colors, all right? But they sent us, like, the full set.
Oh, so you literally, you at the end of the day, for you had to do what that company didn't want to do, which is take out the D20 and toss the rest, so to speak.
No. Oh, okay. No. This was just in the prototyping phase.
Oh, for the prototype. Got it.
So when they sent me the prototype, they sent me the full set, and I kid you not, I literally fell on my knees and praised God in heaven. Because I saw a company before me that would, games, like, to be honest, making games, for those of you out there considering doing it, like, making games is really tough. Ask Ed, he can tell you too. Making games and then going through the process, and then all the all the nitty gritty of playtesting and balancing and getting art and production and finding manufacturers and blah blah blah. It's not easy. If you're considering doing it, think about it a couple times before you click the launch button on your Kickstarter. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying think about it. And so when the dice showed up, it was like, wait, if we can do this 5,000 more times, my wife and baby are going to eat. So that was kind of the short version. So we pursued it, and we pursued it heavy. And obviously, you know how it ended. It worked out. And
so that first set, did you sort of take a risk on your own capital to get it going outside of that other game, or was it really the Hazy Dice Kickstarter that kicked off that first 5,000 or whatever amount you printed?
Sure, I took a little bit of a risk on prototyping a bunch of different color combinations, so I had actual dice to show somebody. But beyond that, it was the generosity of Kickstarter backers.
Awesome. And so and you've done more than one, I feel like, dice Kickstarter campaign. So what have subsequent ones been? More colors?
So more color combinations, and a reprint of the most popular ones from the first run.
Cool. And so one thing you've described, because obviously, or whether or not it's obvious, but you can look at and think about the board game industry and think about it as be somebody who makes games. But I've had a lot of other people. You can be a retailer, a distributor. You can be somebody who is marketing or developer, artists, all these different fields. You have this category which is sort of designing and creating game components, and there's not that many universal components. Dice happen to be one. I have an interview with Kirk Dennison, and he ended up making some a train and lightning bolt tokens out of wood, and he just decided to super manufacture them and sell them through the Game Crafter, but sort of dabbled with this. As you've moved into it, what are some of the interesting and different lessons you've learned as you've gone from essentially board game creative to more supply chain, manufacturing, component industry work? Like what are some of the things that you've had to learn and pick up along the way?
Sure, I definitely learned it's a lot harder than I expected. When I went through my first game, I expected it to be a journey. I had no idea how hard pre-press would be. For those of you not familiar with pre-press, it's the concept of taking the art and putting it into graphic layouts that can be printed and cut by the manufacturer and turned into a board game. I had no idea how hard that would be. But then when I went into to this day, I still struggle with it with the dice, how immensely difficult it is to do them correctly, keep a quality control over them, and even color match. When we just reprinted Psionic Combat, which is our most popular set. It's blue and purple. It's freaking gorgeous. I actually have absolutely zero with me, so I can't show you. I apologize. But we had to, when we were reprinting them these last few months, we had to re-sample them 4 times to get them to match the first run. And things like that I didn't expect. I'm like, how could it be so hard? Like, don't you have like the color formula written down? But I don't really know exactly what they do with the color formulas, but things like that, it's always end up more complicated than you expect. And everybody who's watching this has been on the receiving end of delays, and it's things like this that cause those.
And so, in terms of how you're now, I mean, do you have like a formal partnership with one manufacturer? I mean, you don't own a building making this stuff. What's the relationship you have with the team that's making the dice?
That's a great question. So we have like an NDA agreement between us with regard to the secrecy of who makes our dice. Everybody, for some reason, in the dice industry seems to try to keep their factory secrets on lockdown. So we do too. So I can only answer that question so much. And I think it's an attempt because everybody, and for Chessex, for example, when they first told me no, they were like, and I'm not telling you what factory's making it, or you're just going to call them. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. So So that's kind of weird answer. It's like, I'm not telling.
No, well, I mean, it speaks to, we see this. I mean, I see this in manufacturing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, most of these factories are willing to just make whatever you want, right? They don't have any insight or interest in the industry, right? So you even see, I mean, you know, you had the fidget cube and stuff where the guy was like, oh, there's a problem with those, and they're like, well, you're some super sensitive, you know, creator. 98% of the world doesn't care about the 2% finesse you wanted to deal with. We'll just sell all these things to somebody else, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, when you know, a lot of people, even Kickstarter creators who make things, I don't think realize how much sourcing goes on in China when manufacturing things, and how many different factories are involved. Some of the bigger publishers, printers, are just assembly teams.
Oh,
and
totally.
most of the, you know, maybe they do the box and like some simple print, but then everything else is sort of shipped in. And even more, when we were together at Gamma, which is, I think, the first time I sort of met you at length, last year. It's last year, right? Or early this year? Is that,
no, it's this year. It's in March.
Oh, there you have it. You see more and more like component manufacturers trying to like sell their stuff. So like, I remember the guy who came around with his see-through transparent cards, right, and his process. And
oh yeah,
you're like, well, can you like, if we needed a box? He's like, no, we just make the cards. Well, it's like, so like, what do you ask me to do? Like, just source your cards. And you know, for me, I've worked now in hardware more for the last 3 years in computer hardware. The more difficult the thing is to create, and the more price sensitive you are, the more you can sort of get involved in those conversations if you want to. So you can be like, actually, I am going to, you know, I don't like that dice manufacturer you've chosen. I want you to choose that one and talk to them and get involved. But you know, you've got to visit China and learn Chinese. Have you been to China? Or?
No, I haven't, but I really want to go.
Yeah.
I would love to visit the dice factory to better understand what happens there in the actual process, to reduce, to reduce communication issues, not just the language barrier, but like, oh, now I see how you do this. Why this way? Got it. That makes sense. Blah 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 blah. Can we do this instead? Yes, no.
And so when you look at your halvesy slate or your dice slate, obviously you hit on this really nice aesthetic, and then that also has some great properties as well in terms of weight and that kind of thing, and accuracy. You know, do you see yourself sort of starting new lines or going at different components? Like, you know, if we look at your company in 3 years, what's your sort of offering look like, do you think?
That's a great question. Honestly, I love the question because my goal is to be one of the top 3 names in dice in under 3 years. And we're about a year and a half in already. That's a big
dream, man.
Thanks.
That's good. That's good.
There are some names in dice that I don't necessarily put on that list. For example, like Q Workshop. They don't make what I make. You know, we can have a booth right next to each other and nobody's going to notice. They make a bajillion unique, super overcomplicated fancy dice. They've actually made dice for the King's Armory for us before. Sure. Not halvesies, but other custom dice we've sourced from them. But the other ones that sell, like the polyhedral sets that they're known for, is the goal. So right now we have full polyhedral sets. This January, maybe December, January, we're releasing bulk dice, loose dice. So for like the Wargamer, I sell RPG sets and people come by all the time and they're like, "That's awesome, but on RPG I play Warhammer and I need 50 D6, you know, or whatever it is," and making that available. We will be the only entity on the planet that sells bulk dice, pick and choose from our website. So you can visit our website and say, "I want 5 of this one, 1 of this one, 2 of this one," and ship it here. And
now, is that you getting a printout from your computer and going like, or do you have any sort of?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Depending on how quickly it ramps up, I have a couple warehouse managers lined up who are interested in the job. But of course, the volume needs to hit the point that I can afford a warehouse manager. That's always the way in business of any form.
And you know, you've got to be careful whenever you're expanding. So actually, I want
also one other thing on that is we're modifying our case, and we're going to start releasing official D6 blocks, where we're going to have a 3-dimensional clamshell case, but it's actually shaped like a tower, and each of the rocks of the tower wall and parapets is the case for an individual die. So it looks like a dice tower, and so we're gonna break into pip. We're gonna start doing pips. All of our dice so far have been numbered. So we're gonna start.
Right. I mean, so you have a roadmap in terms of, what a full offering of dice looks like, right? I mean, you can go to a Chess 6 booth and say, okay, well, this is sort of the market space for dice types, pip types that people are interested in. Do you have out of curiosity, because this was a big conversation I got into with my first game, I think, Liftoff, having to do with I want to say the 2 and the 5 or the 3. There's which orientation you have your all your numbers. Do you have an official, is your 1, 2, 3, are they all in the same orientation every time on all your dice?
Yeah. Yep. We always and since we do the halvesies, we center the low and the high numbers. So the 1 and the 6 are always centered on the color half. The other alternative, especially in the D20 world, is what they call spin down dice. And I think that might be what you're talking about. So the 20's at the top, and opposite is the 1, and the 19's here, and opposite's the 2.
Because arguably they could be anywhere, right? And
ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, if you give it a good enough chuck, it doesn't matter where they are. There are people that really believe that if they're not exactly opposite on each other, that it's not truly random. And that's mostly because it'd be easier to cheat.
Sure.
It'd be easier to make the higher half show up when you roll it. But
one of the things, I look at your dice, and have you ever done anything where, since you have such a clear line for high and low, or since you have such a fixed color line,
sure,
I could imagine you'd have orientation with when you roll a die, whether it's all white, black, or half as a mechanic you could put into a game. But
totally,
do something.
Yep, especially on the D6, which is the most reliable and easiest in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Well, so
I haven't implemented it yet, but
those are the kinds of things I think of. But so one of the thing that sort of set off us getting on the phone, I'm sure we would have crossed paths eventually, but Essen just occurred, and I was catching up with a bunch of people who were at the show, and you I don't remember, I said, how'd you do, or I don't remember what the conversation was, but you're like, we just lost so much money, it blows my mind. Can you, just for those people who are thinking about, I mean, you're primarily dice, so I believe in terms of your overall inventory, so
at this point, yes.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily a one-to-one to a board game creator, but everyone's always considering and thinking about, should I go to BGG, should I go to Gen Con, should I go to PAX, should I go to Essen? What happened? With as much detail as you're comfortable, why was Essen this big?
I'm totally here. I'm looking for something to help the conversation. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it here. No, I don't think I have it in here. All right. So, the situation was this. We went to, let's start at Gen Con.
Okay.
Gen Con was not our first rodeo. It was our third Gen Con. We're officially grandfathered in and can rebook on site and all that sort of fancy stuff.
And you look good. I saw you running your show over there, and it seemed like it was doing well.
Gen Con was fantastic, and it was a blast. We did incredibly well. Without too much nitty-gritty involved in all the details, Gen Con cost us about $15,000 to be there. Between the booking of the booth space
and hotels and the travel and all that,
and end cap, so it was double corners, and then the hotels, and then the advertising, and then we had a booth handmade out of wood, so it looked like a keep because that's our thing, and all sorts of really cool stuff. $15,000, and we did well over 20 in sales. So it's not like a huge profit margin per se, but we made a profit and we did fairly well.
Huge exposure, right? I mean, whether or not doing $20,000 in sales, whether or not it's $2,000 in profit or $10,000 in profit, you're still moving that much stuff.
Yeah. So I have the UK Games Expo thing here. Let's pretend it was the Gen Con one, which is around here somewhere. But this is the back cover. At Gen Con, our ad was the inside back cover.
Cool.
So incredibly expensive. That's like $4,000, just so you know. And so yeah, huge exposure. Totally. You're spot on. So then when I had been to Gen Con 3 times, I've been doing this long enough. That means I've been here at least 3.5 years. And I heard rumors of Essen. Like, are you going to Essen Spiel?
Yeah.
You know it makes Gen Con look like a little sissy. You're like, oh my gosh, what the heck? So I decided, let's pull the trigger this year. I'm gonna leave the States for the first time in my life.
You had to get a passport and stuff.
Yep, got a passport to the whole 9 yards.
I didn't think they gave guys like you passports.
What's that?
It was a joke, man.
All right, well, guess what? I can rewind this.
You can.
So, they let me in. I look German. So, we went big. We actually went $17,000 in at Essen. So, if this is the Essen guide, we were the actual back cover.
Wow, man.
And like I said, I have a goal. I've got 3 years to make it. So
yeah, I mean, and so okay, so you have this huge, but you're still probably not like in one of the main floors where you.
Therein lies the problem, my friend.
I see.
So, for your viewers watching who haven't been to one or either, Gen Con is utterly massive, but it's all one room. It's all one room. So everybody, or most people, I would say the vast majority, end up walking around most of it at some point.
Right, at least
walking
once.
Through Gen Cons like this, it's like, oh, excuse me, oh, excuse me, oh, excuse me, oh, excuse me, to get anywhere. It's constantly packed, and everybody makes it around, for the most part, everywhere. Essen is very different. There are 8 exhibit halls. 8. Each one is separated by rooms. So there's a wall that you have to go through that, if nothing else, is a psychological wall. Am I going to leave this room to go into the next one to see what's on the other side? It's not just like, well, I'm going to walk there, because it's where the path goes. Some of those rooms, to get from one to the other, it's more than a wall. It's like a small tunnel packed with people. Some of them you literally have to go outside and like walk across the parking lot to get into the next building. It's a small parking lot, but to get into the next building. So it's a very mental disconnect, and it's so much bigger. So walking around Essen's like this, it's like, whee, because it's so spread out. That said, we were not in Hall 1, 2, or 3 with Asmodee and Fantasy Flight and Haba and all the big names. We were in Hall 6, and the reason why they did Hall 6 for us, amongst other reasons, it was our first time, maybe they're jamming us in the back, but Hall 6 is the Wargamer role-playing comic hall.
Well, that doesn't seem terrible. Or is it?
But it's a board game convention.
Sure.
It's not a role-playing convention, and it's not a Comic-Con.
Sure.
And Comic-Con people don't want to buy dice.
No, but you think role-playing players would want to buy dice now, or?
Well, you think with the wargaming and the RPG, I mean, we did a decent amount in sales, you know what I mean, but nowhere near Gen Con. So basically, when I talked to people, everybody in the hall, everybody I talked to in the hall was like, oh, Hall 6, huh?
Yeah.
Everybody was suffering in there. And it was not good. So we did $7,000 in sales at Essen, which means that we lost a total of $10,000.
That's a lot, man. For a small business, that is a lot.
It is an awful lot. And it's money that we don't have. I mean, I spent it in advance and didn't recover it. But I expected to blow past the 17, hit 25 or 30, because it's supposed to be better than Gen Con, right? So it's kind of a huge deal.
And, when you look back on it, was it, is your reflection, when I'm going to a new con, I should at least have one on boots on the ground here where I get a feel for it? Or is it just, no, it was basically the right decision, I should have just forced to get a better haul? Or, like, where what do you think, what's your takeaway on that? Like,
it's a good question. Honestly, to be perfectly honest, in the last 3 weeks since I've gotten back, I'm getting ready for PAX Unplugged. and I've spent zero recollection time properly on it. But with the question asked, and I am an advice giver. I don't know if you've been to our website, but I do Kickstarter advice columns on our website. It's a meta blog. It's really cool. If you want to do a Kickstarter thing, go visit it.
Check it out.
No, it's really good. Gosh, I plan on writing it. I plan on writing like a how to conventioneer advice column in the next few months. So I'd say go read that. But it's definitely going to include the advice of like of asking around. You know, calling up Edo and saying, "Hey, have you been to Essen?"
Right.
You know, you're a medium, largish, growing guy. Have you been to Essen yet? What was your experience there? Have you been to UK Games Expo? What's your experience there? Have you been to blah blah blah? What advice do you have? Right. And then honestly, I'm not going back to Essen for at least 2 or 3 years. I just we also had our backpack stolen with my laptop in it and like prototype notes and stuff. It was a really, really bad weekend. So between the bad taste, the huge loss, the no promise of anything being better in the future.
Well, it's a fair answer. I mean,
yeah. If you're a small publisher, don't go to Essen. Would be my advice right now. Don't go to Essen.
Did you out of curiosity? And there's something about
go to Essen as a guest.
Right.
Don't do a booth your first time. Go to Essen, get a feel, and network. Networking at Essen's amazing because everybody's got so much time because the halls are so big. They're not swamped constantly like Gen Con. It's great for networking. It's great for making friends. It's great for that sort of stuff. I'm bigger than small. I'm officially like medium small now. And even as a medium small publisher, I mean, let's be honest. It was.
Well, so did you? One of the things I'd be curious about, and actually the theft thing's a big deal at Essen, but
it's huge at Essen.
Yeah, professional.
Everybody got something stolen from them. It's terrible.
What did you see of your competitors who you're soon to be knocking? You know, in the next 3 years, you're going to shoot to the ground. You're like,
I'm actually friends with all of them, for the record. I actually legitimately am friends with all of them.
Well, fair enough, but. Like, was Chessex there? Did they have a booth? Yes. Was it in the same area as yours? Or were they in the other hall?
They were in Hall 1. So by the time that, people who were looking for us and looking for Havesies Dice found us. You know what I mean? You pull out the whole map and you go and you find somebody that you want to visit. As far as, the random swing-bys, by the time that most people made it as far back as our hall, which was, you had to go through Hall 1 into Hall 2, into the Galleria, into Hall 6, and then we were in the far back corner. By the time that you got to us, you'd probably found Chessex, and you found like the 5 other guys who were like selling stuff that included dice. You know what I mean? So,
and I guess my other question would have been, because this is a market that I'm not familiar with so much, but like when you look at your current customer base. And you look at your sales and your Kickstarters and all your numbers, like, do you think there's a large interest in Europe for these type of dice? Or, like, was there any leading information that suggested to you there's going to be a huge interest in Europe for them?
No, nothing that stood out. I mean, I don't have anything on numbers that says Europe's definitely...
So you were just like... Each con I go to is better and better and better and bigger. I'm just going to go to the next biggest, and then you pushed your luck one too many.
I did. Yeah, I really did. So, I'm not going to go from Essen to UK Games Expo, which has like a third of the attendance, and say, it's going to be bigger and better. I know honestly, I think it's going to be smaller and better. But that's to be determined, and I need to call some people who have been and ask them. And then, but yeah, no, Essen, yeah, I really expected, I was told by everybody that I spoke to in the last 3 years that Essen's like the mama. And I now officially beg to differ. I think I will declare Gen Con, if Essen's the mama, then I will declare Gen Con the papa.
Wow.
It is bigger and stronger.
Awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, or not awesome, I guess. Terrible, but what, you know what I mean.
Oh, it's awesome for Gen Con. It's terrible for Essen.
All right, and so, again, and I think just in terms of the people who are watching and creators, right, these are just the types of business lessons you get as you're moving from small to medium. You're committing larger dollar amounts. They're bigger risks, and sometimes they come up, sometimes they don't.
Yep, 100%.
And so what's on your, because we're coming to 40 minutes, and my computer runs out of juice. Though my Kickstarter did pretty well, so that's exciting.
Congratulations, by the way. 208 backers and $4,700 is nothing to shake a stick at.
No, it's not. And
I want another interview on the sweet camera I helped you buy.
Well, there's gonna be a lot of them. That's good. Actually, though, your interview quality is your camera. But so anyway, my question for you is, you have this.
In that case, it's not worth it. I have a Logitech.
You have this business plan. You have this objective, and I'll tell you, the only other person that's been that clear was when I spoke to Sherry, and she was like, "We want to knock Hasbro out. Like that's our goal." And
Sherry, forgive me.
Breaking Games.
Oh, okay, great.
Cards Against Humanity, Ad Magic. Those.
Yep, totally. Yep.
And so, what are the things you mentioned? A big shipment's coming over in December or January. What what does next year look like? Not 2 years from now, not when you take over the world, but just in the next 6 months. What are the big things happening with you?
D6 blocks in the sexy tower case, which if it works out, it's gonna have a little catapult on the top. And then to launch the dice.
It sounds perfect.
You're not a dice guy, you don't understand, but your dice watchers are really excited about the catapult. And then,
about how excited you are.
Yeah, with hashtag and those will be with pips for the war gamers who love their pips. And then the King's Armory is coming up on a meta reprint and a meta expansion, which I'm really excited about. It's in hardcore playtesting right now. I'm so excited. Look, if you played the King's Armory, then you understand how exciting this is. And you need to play the King's Armory because it's such an exciting game.
Send me a copy, man.
I might actually be able to do that because we're out of print, so I have nothing available, but I was just in my...
When you get your next print going, whatever makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk. I might have found, no joke, I think I just found 3 in my attic that are I had 3 tiers. I had the retail version, I had the special edition version, and in between I had a Kickstarter version, and it's kind of like the red-headed bastard stepchild.
And you're not allowed to sell them, right?
Yeah, so I kind of don't sell them, blah blah blah. It's overcomplicated, so I might be able to do that. So and then we also and because I am a game designer at heart. Dice is you can kind of do it by accident sometimes, where you're all right, send an email, give me red and green, see how that looks, and then move on in life. Doesn't really take a ton of design time. I am a game designer at heart, so I have another game that I'm working on, hopefully going to be released in 2018, called The Siege Perilous, which is a meta story building, a legend building, kingdom building deck builder. It's awesome. I build big, complicated games. I don't build simple games. I just don't. I'm not a simple game maker.
Adapter was not a small card game, wasn't it?
It is small. It's pretty tiny. But it's the meat inside of it.
Big on the inside. Big on the inside.
Really, everybody's this was way more strategic than I expected.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks for being on. I am really sorry about the situation in Essen, but I appreciate you sharing because again, it's just a reminder that when you take business leaps, there's a chance you might not quite get to the other side of it, and you have to figure it out.
Totally. And if my experience, because I do this all the time, you'll see it on my Kickstarter advice columns thing, I do it all the time. I do the stupid thing. Well, this was a good idea. It just went wrong. But I do stupid things on purpose in order to see how it'll go, in order to give advice on it. So to have done something goodwill that I thought was a great idea and have it go wrong and still be able to give advice on it, I'm really happy that I was the guy leading the hike and fell in the pit first to call out behind me, "Pit!"
All right, man. Awesome. And everyone watching, thanks so much. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Play some great games.
All right. Bye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.